Yes, 101.1 FM and AM 1160. Good morning, and thanks so much for being with us here today on this Friday, January the 21st. Mr. Bob Pollock in the studio with us this morning. Mr. Pollock is, of course, brought to you from the Extension Service. Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Extra cold if you happen to be outside.
Definitely.
It's different, isn't it?
It's very different.
Yeah. All right, so people are thinking about spring right now. They're desperately thinking about spring, and what they might be doing now in order to make their gardens grow and things of that nature come springtime. So let's talk about that. We have talked in the past when we get to this segment near the end of January about people planning to move gardens to other areas of their yards, maybe if they have room. And the issues that will be involved in that, they probably should have started, maybe turned some dirt over in the fall, shouldn't they?
You could have definitely done that in preparation if it was sod, or maybe it was just weeds. But locating that place, getting the soil turned over is an option. Doesn't have to be done then, but it could have been. Doing a soil sample.
That's highly important, isn't it?
That can be very helpful because, especially if we need to adjust the soil acidity or soil pH, we need some time. We need months, actually, ahead of time to make that change. That doesn't happen overnight. It's a little different than putting fertilizer on the soil. That lime has to react, and it needs to dissolve because it's a crushed rock, limestone. So it's quarried, and then it's crushed into a powder. And there are different variations of lime. We can't just speak of lime as lime.
Yeah.
When you get into it, it's a little more complex than that. But the finer it is, the quicker it breaks down. Which then it reacts in the soil and makes the soil less acidic, or we call that alkalinity, or more alkaline. So sometimes our soils in western Pennsylvania, not always, but in a lot of areas, will become naturally acidic. So we need to apply that lime to adjust that pH to get it in the best range for the majority of plants to grow. And granted, we have some plants that like more acid soils, especially some of the ornamental shrubs and trees like it a little more acidic. Blueberries, of course, as we've talked before, are probably the best example of a small fruit that needs acid soil to perform well. So if you were going to plant blueberries, we definitely have to get that adjusted ahead of time prior to planting. Because it becomes a real struggle if we wait till after we plant and then we start and look at the plant, and 1 year later, 2 years later, it's surviving, but it's not thriving.
I'm glad you struck on blueberries because I've got some down at the bottom of my yard, and the soil in which they are planted it isn't really conducive to expansion of the plant. They've been there for probably 15 or 20 years. Get a huge amount of blueberries off it, but they're just thin one-stalk spindles, the plants themselves. They get up to 5 or 6 feet high, but they're not bushing out and growing in that way. And I would guess that would take some soil preparation on my part. One of the things is that they're planted in what used to be a fenced area, and there were a rock bed of river rock underneath it. So they're in the dirt with the river rock still there. I'm not helping them a lot, am I?
Well, the river rock aren't going to harm them. Let's put it that way. But the fact that they've survived for that long and they're that tall, some of that could be related to soil nutrient conditions and soil pH. But the fact that they've grown, now they could be more bushier, so some of that comes into pruning and maintenance of the plant also, that if we leave particularly a blueberry plant alone, and this is the same of other multi-stemmed shrubs, that if we just let them alone for years and never do any pruning, never remove any of the oldest stems in there, that plant tends to just get bigger, woodier, grow thicker trunks, but it doesn't send up new shoots from the base of the plant. And we usually need to rejuvenate plants, especially blueberries, to keep them healthy, to keep them productive. We need to get new wood in there. So we have to prune them, and that usually involves removing entire canes, the oldest ones, in order to stimulate new growth from the base of the plant. So if we do that on a regular basis, and with blueberries, we'd like to have about 12 to 15 canes coming up out of the ground or stems, and then each year you remove the 2 or 3 oldest ones. Now that would be preferable. Now oftentimes they don't exactly perform in that manner. You might only have 10 canes, or you might have less than that.
In my case, they just have the one cane coming up out of each.
And part of that could go back to just that cane developed, that was strong, and it never was able to send up other canes that then become replacement canes. And within a blueberry plant, we like to have 1 or 2, sometimes 3 stems that are 1 year old and about the same amount, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old. So 5 times 3 would be 15. All right. So, and then that always gives you oldest stems to remove each winter, and then allows for some potential new growth to come up, and those younger canes to flower and fruit. And the whole plant will be more productive that way.
Yeah. So in the month of January, when we're thinking about these things, and you think, okay, come spring, what should I do with that plant? It really, when it starts to grow again, isn't the time to be thinking about that, is it?
No. We want to, a lot of that pruning needs done prior to bud break in the spring.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't, and again, a lot of times pruning of whether it's blueberries or apple trees or other fruit trees, a lot of that can be done. You don't want to go out today and do that.
Yeah.
But a lot of that is done during this winter time frame. Sometimes they'll start in December because of the volume that they have to prune.
Yeah.
They have to start then in order to get done by bud break. So a lot of that, we have some flexibility there, fortunately, to do that. But if you only have a couple trees and you can get to it when you need to, a lot of times it's best to wait till we get through the worst of winter, because we never know, that ice storm that'll break a big branch out. And if we've done all our pruning ahead of time, then yes, we got that job done, and we may have got it done correctly, but we maybe didn't account for the fact that we could have severe cold, which can kill buds, or other storm damage, like ice storms that can cause breakage. Then we have to go back in and do pruning. And we might have to do that anyhow, but the longer we wait, the more flexibility we have to make adjustments when we do that job to minimize really having to take a lot out of the plant.
Talking with Bob Pollock from the Extension Service this morning. Since we last spoke last Friday, we got ourselves a nice 10-inch snowfall.
Yes, we did.
Followed by this really cold weather these last couple nights, last night, and then again coming up tonight when it's going to be below zero. So those are different winter conditions, but it's not all that far away that we're thinking about the thaw. And
yeah, that's right.
And pretty soon we'll be able to get out there and walk about and see what kind of winter damage we have to deal with.
And it's nice when we do have these single digits or maybe even some negative numbers that we have snow cover on the ground to help protect some of those plants that might be more vulnerable to that. So it's just a winter blanket over there, and that is a big help to get through these kind of conditions and cause less stress on some of the plants that are more vulnerable.
When it has not been really cold enough all winter long to freeze something, and people have left some of their root plants out there because of that, they might still have carrots in the ground that are still viable. But here come these 2 nights when it's 0 or below. Is it time to get that stuff out of there? Is the ground going to freeze with the 2 days of hard freeze like this? Is the ground going to freeze very deep?
It was already frozen a little bit before we got this. We've had cold enough temperatures that the ground, there was a crust in places where the top of the ground had started to freeze. Now, hopefully, if you had those root crops in, you already had them mulched so that it wouldn't freeze. Because once that ground freezes, then those root crops, they have moisture in them. They're going to freeze too, and then
Mush.
the other end of that, they become fertilizer for the soil for the next crop.
Less than viable for your salad.
That's right.
Yeah.
Unless you want to drink it.
Yeah, there you go.
Which some people do.
You don't have to put it in the blender now.
No.
Just dig it up and see if you can separate the dirt out of it. All right, so those are some of the things we think about here as we get toward the end of January and we wait for the seed catalogs to come. Have your seed catalogs started coming?
Yes.
They have?
Yes.
How do you get a lot?
It adds up.
Yeah. You didn't bring me
But
any.
it's nice. It's nice to see. I can't believe you haven't been getting any in the mail.
No, I don't get them anymore.
Of course, sometimes there's less of that these days. That used to be the only way that you could get that information, and now we have so many other options. A lot of that's just online.
Used to be they were there. I mean, we would get those seed catalogs. We haven't gotten a seed catalog in years. Bring me one.
So you have
bring
to
back the old days.
That's right. Go online and look at all that stuff.
I miss them. Because you look at the pictures they put in there, and especially some of those ornamental shrubs and everything, and they're like 7 feet tall and bushy and beautiful and everything, and you say, that's not going to happen in my place. That's just...
And sometimes it's nice to be able to look at that, and you can look at maybe 10 or 11 different varieties on one page, and it just seems like it's a little more challenging to do that when you're looking at it on a screen.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, Mr. Sir, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.